going to make rustic Spanish bread. I've got 6 cups of flour and 1 tablespoon of salt in this bowl, and now I've used about a cup and a little less than 2 cups of whole wheat flour, and the other is white bread flour. I've let proof in a bowl 2 3/4 cups of warm water, about 100 degrees, with 5 teaspoons of yeast or 2 packets of yeast, and you can see it's foamy and ready to go. So we're going to pour this in with our flour and salt mixture with 1/4 cup of olive oil. We started loving Spanish bread when we went to Seville several years ago, and we stayed in a real cute little boutique hotel, but we decided we wanted to venture out for breakfast. Now I'm just going to stir this to combine it. You could do this in a stand mixer. So we found a cute little bread place, or breakfast place, and we noticed every local in there was having this bread topped with olive oil and tomato. So we wanted to try the local favorite, and I thought I lost count when I was doing this. I need 1 more cup of flour. Hang on. See, that's what happens when you start trying to do too many things at one time. But we noticed everyone was eating this bread with the tomato stuff on it. So we ordered it and fell in love with it. It's kind of the crumb in the bread is kind of chewy, and it's with the olive oil, it's kind of got a sweet flavor to it, and it's also served with that tomato puree. And what they do with the tomato puree is they take a whole tomato and grate it on a grater, and then strain with a strainer to get the juice, a lot of the juice out, so you're left with just the pulp of the tomato, which is just really delicious. So when we got home, we didn't want to not have our tomato Spanish bread, so I did some research on the internet and found a recipe for rustic Spanish bread, and this is pretty close. And see, it's coming together, and again, it's going to get a little harder to stir, and we're going to now turn it out and get ready to start our kneading process. The hardest thing for me to do in this is to keep count of how many cups of flour, which you've noticed I lost track of when I was doing this one. And again, you could do this in a stand mixer if you didn't want to do it by hand, but I've done it both ways, and I actually like doing it by hand better.
Well, you're kind of rustic like the bread.
I guess I am, aren't I? Okay, now we're going to start our kneading process. And you're going to knead this for about 4 minutes. So it's going to take a little bit of time. I had another cup of flour on the board and on the counter here, and you may have to add a little more depending on, again, the humidity and how the flour takes to the mixture, how much flour the mixture takes.
How many loaves is that going to make?
This will make 2 big loaves. So I do this probably about every 10 days because we eat this every day. At least we eat it with dinner with olive oil and salt and pepper and red pepper flake instead of butter. I have it for breakfast a lot of times with tomato or with a slice of ham or something on it with some olive oil. The other thing we learned about on that same trip was good olive oil. So now we're spoiled. We buy olive oil from a supplier that imports it from Spain for our good olive oil. We cook with, regular olive oil, but to pour on a piece of toast, you want to have a good fruity olive oil. And we found that we really like the Spanish olive oil better than some of the other ones we'd had. We actually went to an olive oil mill on one of our trips and got to talk to the people who grow it, and it was an organic farm, so it was really interesting to be a part of that. Now I've also got over here on the side a large bowl that I've sprayed with olive oil spray very liberally, because you don't want, when you let this rise, you don't want it to stick to the bowl. And it's going to rise for about an hour, and then we're going to punch it down and form the loaves and let it rise for about 25 more minutes, and then bake it in a 425 degree oven for about 25 minutes. And you can see this is really starting to firm up and come together. And when you get through with this, don't clean the counter off, because you're going to have to get it right back out there after it rises to form the loaves. you notice, if you watch the video about making pasta, you notice this kneading process is about the same.
This looks a little more strenuous.
Well, you're dealing with a bigger piece of dough, and it is a little more strenuous. But see, I can feel this is starting to come together. This is starting to be about where we're ready to put it in the bowl.
How much of the flour is whole wheat and how much is bleached?
A cup, and I'd say maybe a cup and 2/3 is whole wheat. I experimented with that too because you can't do all whole wheat, it's a little too coarse. And there's different kinds of whole wheat flour. There's what's called white whole wheat. This is not. This is the real grainy whole wheat. So it needs a little more white flour with it than if you used white whole wheat flour, which is a little more refined than just the full whole wheat. But we've also made whole wheat pasta, which it takes a little more egg because again, you got a little bit more rustic flour. It takes 3 eggs instead of 2. Okay, we're getting there. See, we've about used up all this flour. We may have to have some more for when we roll out the buns. If you've never made bread, don't be afraid of it. It's fun. Just get in there, and if it doesn't turn out right the first time, try it again, because you'll get there. And like pasta, we've gotten spoiled. We don't like other bread anymore. So careful what the monster you create. Okay, we're going to put this in the bowl in just a minute and let it set for an hour. And then we'll come back and show you how to form the buns. See, that's taken all that flour. Usually that doesn't happen, so that's interesting that today it took all of it. But we have very low humidity today, so maybe that's got something to do
I bet it does.
For
Yep.
South Florida, that's unusual. Okay. It's still a tiny bit sticky, so we'll get a little more flour in it.
So they call this because it's got whole wheat in it, integral.
Integral, yes.
So you have tostada integral for breakfast in the morning.
That's right. Okay, that's looking good. You see how that firmed up and how it feels more elastic and smooth? That's the way you want it to look. Now we're going to take and see, we got a lot of olive oil in that bowl because you don't want it to stick. So we're going to take this and put it in there and turn it over so you've got olive oil on top. Turn it all around, and now just uncover it with a tea towel and put it in a warm place in your kitchen for an hour. My oven has a bread proofing setting on it, so I do it in the oven. Your oven may not have that, but if not, just put it over in a corner where it's away from an air conditioner vent. Okay, we'll be back in an hour. It's been an hour, and boy, did our dough ever rise. So now we're going to punch it down, and see it goes down pretty fast. And we're going to turn it back out onto our floured surface, and we're going to hit it a few times in the flour just to get it. It'll be a little sticky up in places where it's been rising, and we're going to cut this in two. Got my bench scrape again, one of my favorite tools. Not only is it good in baking and making pasta, you can move your vegetables from your cutting board to the skillet when you're chopping up vegetables. Okay, we're shaping this into a ball, and we're going to put it on a baking sheet that I've lined with parchment paper and sprinkled cornmeal on. So we'll do the same thing with the other half. And now this is going to need to rise again for 25 minutes before we bake it. And you got your oven preheating at 425 right now because it's going to be the next thing we do. Okay, and now we're going to make a slit in the top. This allows, as it bakes, for some of the gases to escape. Okay, Now we're gonna let it rise again for 25 minutes, and then we'll bake it for about 25 minutes in a 425 degree oven. We'll be back to bake. And boy, these are big ones. Look at that. Then I always just move them to a rack and let them sit on the counter and cool. I usually freeze one and keep the other one in the refrigerator. And I know we've all been told you don't store bread in the refrigerator. However, remember, this has no preservatives. So if you don't put it in the refrigerator, you're going to have to eat it pretty quick. And as big as
those are huge.
they are, aren't they? So enjoy. Hope you'll try making bread. And we'll have it probably make mayonnaise next. Bye.